Mise-en-scène. The textbook defines mise-en-scène as staging or putting on an action or scene, and thus is sometimes called staging. A film's mise-en-scène is everything we see in every shot, every object, every person, everything about their surrounding, and how each of these components is arranged, illuminated, and moved around. Paris, Texas was released in 1984, directed by Wim Wenders and co-written by Sam Shepard and L.M. Kit Carson. Wim Wenders is a German filmmaker, photographer, and author whose work in Paris, Texas highlights his diversity as an artist. Throughout the film, you can observe his keen sense of combining a beautiful picture with a complex story. Two specific components we will look at that demonstrate his use of mise-en-scène within Paris, Texas are design and composition. Design includes sets, scenery, costumes, props, lighting, and color. The setting is commonly used in mise-en-scène to convey a mood or specific narrative information, or it can elicit an emotional response or communicate a character's state of mind. One example is the setting of the opening scene, which prompts the question we will continue to ask throughout the movie. Who is Travis and what led him to this place? The setting of a vast desert and a man in a dirty suit who seems inconceivably planted elicits curiosity that leads to the captivation of the audience for the duration of the movie. This overwhelming open shot of a man walking alone through a vast desert in search of something gives us the impression that this film likely has a narrative of depth and tragedy. Lighting is a powerful aspect of mise-en-scène. And one example that I want to highlight is the hard light and shadows that are used to show tension or the dramatic nature of a scene. The scene in the diner when Travis is being confronted with the reality of seeing his son Hunter again is a time that we would expect an emotional response from him. However, up until this point, we haven't observed much variation in his character. It's obvious that he has difficulty expressing himself, but with this use of hard light, shining from the parked car outside, Travis is illuminated in a way that puts him on the spot while enhancing the contrast of his facial expression. This hard lighting technique helps us to understand how he is feeling by emphasizing the sadness and regret he feels when thinking about his son. In most of Wim Wenders' movies, we see a strong influence of color to set a mood, indicate the significance of a character or thing, or subtly reveal a pattern that suggests a deeper meaning behind a story. By far, the color red appears the most compared to any other color within this film. This is because red represents conflict and is almost entirely associated with Travis because he is the source of conflict in every instance within the story. Even the opening credits warn us of what is to come. The opening scene of Travis wearing a red hat is our first sign that he is the origin of distress and he carries it with him wherever he goes. There are many scenes where he is surrounded by the color red, showing that he is plagued by the conflict he creates. Furthermore, the use of red is a theme we see associated with others to again represent the troubling circumstances they experience as a direct result of Travis's choices and actions. The color green seems to represent a calming mood or a resolution. The lighting of the German doctor's exam room is green, which creates a calming, non-threatening environment for both Travis and the audience, inviting us to ease into what's coming next. The green wallpaper in Walt and Anne's kitchen and dining room sets a tone for the beginning of the resolution between the proverbial prodigal son and his family. Notably, there is a blend of green and red, as we can determine that at this stage of the story, there are still a lot of mixed emotions and loose ends to be tied. My favorite use of green lighting is the ending scene in Paris, Texas, when Travis is watching from the parking lot below the hotel where Jane and Hunter finally reunite. Even the color of Jane's sweater, which is green, can be interpreted as another sign of resolution to this story. Composition is the organization, distribution, balance, and relationship of actors and objects in space. Two examples of composition we observe in Paris, Texas are levels of depth and the rule of three. Levels of depth convey information, mood, and meaning. It can also convey emotional distance. In the scene where Travis returns to the club to see Jane a second time, the depth of the shot is deeper here to represent the large distance between them. After Travis turns his chair around to face his back towards Jane, the camera has him in the foreground to show he is the focus as he begins to tell his story. However, as Travis reveals each familiar detail to Jane, the camera gradually gets closer to her. Eventually, the distance between the two becomes much closer as she realizes the identity of Travis. In my opinion, the most powerful moment is when Travis reveals himself to Jane and her face in the mirror is transposed with Travis's face. According to an analysis by Pop Optic, it is an eerie shot that suggests that Travis is not only facing his wife, but himself as well. This rings true, as this is the first and only time we see Travis providing an answer to our daunting question of who is Travis and what led him to this place. Another example of composition that is beautifully displayed in this same scene is that of the rule of thirds. Within this scene, we can observe times that either Travis is in the foreground, the one-way mirror in the middle ground, and Jane in the background, or the reverse. Either way, the rule of thirds clearly defines the separate roles of each object. In this perspective, Travis is the focus of his perspective, the mirror representing the separation between Jane and him, and Jane in the background represents her haunting presence over his life. We can see the same in reverse when we observe the shot from the opposite, Jane's perspective. Jane is the focus, the mirror is what divides them, and Travis is in the background as a haunting presence over her life. Director Wim Wenders refers to Paris, Texas as his second film, despite having made several before, because he stated, "Everything before was practice, which enabled me to make this film, and all the other films taken together were a kind of platform for it." He goes on to list a few of his prior films that contributed to the vision he had for Paris, Texas, which we can clearly see when comparing the mise-en-scène of the film to some of his others. For example, another film by Wenders, The American Friend, has a similar theme of color usage. In many scenes, signature colors such as yellow and red and green are featured just like in Paris, Texas. Robert Ebert said, "The brashness and deepness of colors, the exaggeration of lighting and setting, the extraordinary subtlety of some scenes, and the almost aggressively cheap and garish look of others. This is a signature of Wenders' cinematic language." Yet color isn't the only pattern we see within Wenders' artistic expression. We also observe a similar theme. Ebert also noted, "His central theme is often the same. A man alone and isolated wanders the cities of the world in search of truth, either large or small."